And welcome back, everyone, to another Who Would Win. As I said, I'm going to just do an extra Who Would Win every day for the remainder of the month that that I'm doing a Who Would Win for. So this week's the week of What If, then the following week's the week of Who Would Win. I believe that's the following week. Let me just be sure about that real quick. Yes, the following week is the week of Who Would Win, which continues on into the next week. This will allow me to literally get to the end of my book and rotate it out. But now that I do have a new job, I am going to start training on that this week. I will not. This will be the last month I do that for. But that being said, I'm kind of like doing the extra video, like the extra Who Would Win. So I'd say this on weeks where I say like take a vacation or something like that, I'd still be willing to do it again. I've actually enjoyed having a little extra Who Would Wins to like kind of speed through the book and reset it. Anyway, I digress. So from Samuel, I believe it's Samuel Selzo, we have Who Wins in a Fight, SCP-682, or Yhwach from Bleach. Now, everyone knows, or at least should know at this point, I'm a big Bleach fan. Like, of the big three, that was my favorite series. And 1,000 Year Blood War is just fire right now in the anime. So it might sound like I'm biased whenever I talk about a Bleach character, but there have been Bleach characters that I put in fights that I did not think would win the fight. Now that said, the question is SCP-682 something that could take Yhwach down? Well, Yhwach is the son of the Soul King. We know he is the son of the Soul King. He's directly said that. He has like divine power in him, literally. He is a multiversal level being when fully absorbing the power of the Soul King, which is what you see right there. Even when he's not, by the way, to the person who, there was a video I did a while back of Yhwach versus the character from Fate, and to the person who said I was like, I can't remember what it said, that was basically wanking Yhwach the multiversal. Either you're showing your bias, because if you don't understand that Bleach characters do get the multiversal level power, you're just sticking your head in the sand on that. That doesn't mean they're infallible characters. That just means their universe exists with tiers of different dimensional planes of existence and universes. They are multiversal, the highest tier characters, which Yhwach classifies as. So I don't get where I get the fact that I didn't have the character you wanted to win, and the fact is I don't know that verse as well. I acknowledge that 100%, but like don't be that ass. Don't be that guy who's just like, your guy isn't multiversal. There's little evidence for it. There's statements for it. It's like, no, he's not. Like, don't do that. Don't be that guy. I digress. So yes, if we're looking at Yhwach as peak, which to be fair for Yhwach, we got to do that. And we got to look at both these guys at their peaks. He's an individual who basically was going to just deconstruct the three worlds, the three dimensions / universes, and rebuild it new. Because if you don't know the Bleach lore, summarizing it real quick, there was one universe, one world, one universe at one point. Then the Soul King came along, was helping the Oz, and he let himself be sliced in half, killed, whatever you want to talk about, betrayed, because he can see the future and control it, but he let it happen. So he clearly had to let it happen. And the result was that the people who did it split the worlds into three worlds for the Hollows, the Hungry Spirits, the Shinigami, and the humans and Quincy's. And Yhwach's goal was basically to dethrone his father, become the new Soul King, and reform it into something new. So he is, and with the power of Soul King, he apparently did have the power to do it. Now, I mean, he has all the standard Quincy abilities, the ability to absorb reishi / spiritual energy from the surroundings and use it for various effects. He also has the ability to just take other people's abilities for himself. Unless it's someone who's got a very conceptual ability like Ichibei, who had the power of black itself, then he can't take that. But otherwise, he can just straight out steal powers. He is capable of using different types of Quincy traps. He is capable of distributing his power to other individuals and then taking it back with extra. He is insanely powerful. And again, his outright power is enough to threaten a universe, at least, or threaten a dimension. So, universe and beyond. But his best known and most dangerous power is the Almighty, which you can't tell by looking at these eyes on his face, but basically, Almighty. Not the Almighty SCP, the Almighty Bleach. the Almighty basically gives him multiple pupils. Now, the Soul King actually has 4 of those, whereas Yhwach only has 3, which means the Soul King's power actually superseded his Almighty, was even stronger than Yhwach's. But basically, as it's described, he has, as stated, omni precognition. With the Almighty, Yhwach can see everything that occurs from the present moment into the far-flung future, thus knowing everything within their field of vision. Rather than seeing a linear future, and this is the thing that's really, it's not like he's seeing just one scenario. He observes all possible futures at once, like countless grains of sand in the wind, and thus acts accordingly, knowing these, not using the knowledge he has gained to anticipate encounter the opponents. So he knows everything in the far-flung future that's going to happen because he sees every conceivable timeline. Future acausality. Yhwach has noted that the true power of the Almighty is not to perceive the future, but rather the power to change the future, allowing him to alter future events surrounding him as he sees fit. He utilizes the power to set traps where he knows his opponent will be, preemptively attacking them before they realize. He can outmaneuver any defense and countermeasures to protect themselves in order to facilitate his attack. He can rewrite his own death. However, the only Yhwach can use this aspect of the Almighty, not other individuals. Instant adaptation. He had stated that he can adapt to any power, which he knows through. Immediately adapt to it and will no longer defeat him. Essentially, if he sees a power, it will not affect him in the future. And connection to the Soul King, and he's connected to the Soul King. There are some weaknesses to the Almighty. A couple of these wouldn't matter. For example, the swapping the Almighty with the balance doesn't matter with Yhwach, just because they were connected. That doesn't matter at all. Illusions can affect Yhwach's perception. Like, he can't. It's illusions. Strong enough illusions can trick his Almighty. It doesn't defeat or anything, but because he's looking at certain futures, if he's seeing a future that the illusion is presenting, he might assume it is that future, when in actuality, it's not the future he's seeing. So a strong enough illusion can, in fact, not overwhelm, but trick the Almighty. He is also incapable of seeing the actions of Soul King related, like the other arm of the Soul King. He was unable to see the actions of that. So he was, but that's irrelevant to this fight, unfortunately. Now let's see. There's a few other minor weaknesses to the Almighty. Past manipulation. There was a ability called Book of the End where a character literally could insert himself into the past, his presence in the past, and alter it. From there, he literally was able to fix a broken weapon that had been destroyed because he's saying, "Oh, it didn't happen because I changed the past." It doesn't actually work against abilities like that, but SCP-682 doesn't have those types of abilities. And still silver, which doesn't matter in this fight. Now then, SCP-682 is known as the hard-to-kill but reptile. Its main ability is to adapt. Adapt to anything that kills it, adapt to just continue to survive, and then basically, it's similar to Yhwach, not be affected by whatever tried to SCP-682. There you are, buddy. And then be unaffected by it. He also has the ability to grow by consuming matter. In theory, like the theorized final endgame for him, because he hates all life and just wants to snuff it out, is to just get so big he consumes the entirety of existence, more or less, and be floating alone for the rest of eternity, more or less. But there is other lore that arguably surrounds SCP-682. For example, it is theorized, or at least some stories state, that he's like the son of the Scarlet King or something like that. Yes, in the tale of Dust and Blood, he is the offspring of the Scarlet King, and it was one of the many Leviathans spawned from the fourth bride of the king. Her children were said to be like her. They feared no weapon, no magical spell, for their injuries were healed and their hides impenetrable. 682, with the rest of the Leviathans, festered in the Tree of Roots and rotting them away. Scarlet King led an army of Leviathans, blah, 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 blah. But there are other origins as well. The problem is, a lot of people, when these SCP fights come up, try to wank these guys to their highest caliber. And it's like, well, there's unfortunately, unlike someone like Yhwach, who we know has a peak, there's but he also has the definitive storyline. There is so many other storylines in that, because SCP is just a fan-made concoction, similar to kind of like a creepypasta, that it's difficult to go with which individual story. But that being said, this is how the world ends. A different tale. SCP is running for its life, presumably from the Colturn. Ran some men, which would have been aid for 682. Thankfully, they were explorers like him, which meant that there was still ways away. Explorers were violent and outnumbered him. I have no idea what that's about. Banishment from Earth, Lord Blackwood, Dark. Either way, Foundation custody. It's unknown when the Foundation discovered or acquired SCP-682, but presumably it happened shortly after the creature attacked a farm and slaughtered everything on it. It bore a particular hatred for the humans on the farm, and when questioned about its motives, it says they were disgusting. It's escaped at least 6 times. It killed hundreds of staff during that time. A termination order has been issued for it, but it adapted and evolved every time that it tried to kill it. Using either conventional means such as bombs and depressuring the environment, or using other abnormalities such as facing off with like 173 or 096 have failed attempts, resulting in 204 being used for the last resort to slow down 682. It stated with possible endings. Its state is intriguing. No natural law binds this form, only those of the mind. My mind was incomplete. I could not remember my original form, not the one you nor the one before your perfection, and blah 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 blah. So it's on its own point version. It developed. The Foundation developed SCP-6820 as a result of a project known as Project Antkill, with the device intending to be used to be able to erase its existence from reality alongside every single concept relating towards it, including any note of its existence. However, this attempt failed, the result of the machine not erasing 682 from its own thoughts, resulting in becoming an entity unknown to the Foundation entirely. Its status as an immortal enigma then proceeded to corrupt 6820, turning the former Thallium-class machine meant to destroy a threat to the universe into a highly dangerous Apollyon class. Oh, these are new classes. Destroyer that is repurposed in order to warp reality into a form where life cannot exist. Mind you, this is possible endings. This isn't the true ending. When day breaks, let's see here. Upon exposing the truth of sunlight, 682 didn't join the flesh of the sun and became the opposite and became darkness itself. Quiet days. Lost its regenerative, causing everything but its bones. Okay, so eventually, apparently lost in one storyline its regenerative capabilities. Project Isarupa. I don't know what that is. Great. Many living reality. Okay. So basically, at its peak, this being theoretically is a world ender. Like, it's not just a world ender, it is something beyond rationale. Like, as it turned into 682-0A instead of just 682, gained multiple powers, resulting in numerous failed attempts at killing it, being able to posse embodiment of 69996, Rage Incarnate, and shortly after gaining stats of Unknown, resulting in every piece of info on it relating to becoming lost in a record of memory. As part of corruption, gained the ability to warp reality, changing Foundation to mindless monsters, while further gaining resistance to reality warping entities as the Foundation made further futile attempts to kill it. So essentially, if I'm being so let me just be fair here, because Yhwach does have a peak state, so let's just look at that real quick. If I were to throw just the standard version of SCP 682 at Yhwach would waste that thing. Maybe not kill it, because maybe it wouldn't be able to kill it. That being said, he can also manipulate souls too, so it's possible. If 682 has a soul, then it's possible. Because he's just firepower wise, Yhwach literally is a multiversal level threat at his peak. So there's nothing SCP-682 actually can do against Yhwach, because the Almighty would just prevent any damage to him. While SCP-682 does have adaptability, He can adapt to things that are trying to kill him. He can't adapt to something that's causing like a causal time manipulation stuff. At least not the way Yhwach does it, because it's all that ability is coming from Yhwach. It's not directly affecting him. But if I'm going to be fair to the SCPs guys out there, I do have to look at him at his peak. Now, him at his peak makes him a universal, it's straight out stated, a universal level threat with reality warping powers and still all of his adaptability. Now you have an individual that's on a much more even playing field with Yhwach. Now you have a guy that Yhwach, even with the Almighty, would actually probably have trouble putting down. Because he's literally able to affect reality on a universal scale. Well, maybe not a universal scale, but the idea is he threatens the overall universe. Let's see. No, it's intense resisting. And he's also resistant to reality warping, which, technically speaking, the Almighty both does and doesn't qualify as. It's more temporal manipulation, not reality manipulation, but it does affect the reality on a whole. So that fight becomes a lot more interesting. I think that'd be more closer to like the Aizen Yhwach fight, where they're actually trading blows with each other. And using reality warping means he can, in theory, create illusions. If he is smart enough now and clever enough to actually figure out how the Almighty is working, he could bait Yhwach and then deliver like a horrifying strike, try to consume him. But the catch still comes down to he might be able to adapt to the Almighty on some level, but he can't adapt fully because, again, it's Yhwach who just gets to look at time and controls it. And unfortunately, he doesn't have an answer for Yhwach just being able to rewrite his own death. Yhwach still sees every possible future outcome, including everything involving the peak version of this. He would probably acknowledge like this, you're difficult to kill, definitely. So I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to put you somewhere else. Like, if he can literally deconstruct 3 universes and bring it back into one, he can probably just say, here's a pocket dimension, have fun there. And by the way, and I can see every reality. I've done all the precautions that would prevent you from getting out. So it would be a more difficult fight for Yhwach, but the fact is, he'd still basically be immune to nearly everything that gets thrown out after he sees it, obviously, which in the future he can see everything. So even the reality warping, while would be effective for a short time, even Yhwach would just adapt to it and be like, okay, that's enough of that. So while I think the peak fights would be a lot more fun to watch, it would definitely, I'd love to see a video on it. If I had the animation skills, oh hell yeah, I'd do it. I don't, but I would. I'd still take Yhwach in the fight, but that fight, them both at their peaks, is a lot closer than. And I mean, this isn't even going off of the whole Son of the Scarlet King lore, who is a causal, multiversal, beyond level being. Mind you, being the son of him doesn't make him as strong as the Scarlet King by a mile, but he's still would be insanely overpowered in many ways. So I mean, yeah, and I'm just looking to make sure he doesn't have, say, like, because he does have levels of nigh omnipotence and omniscience, but he doesn't have the ability to like see into the future. That's where Yhwach really gets him. Yeah, he does have higher dimensional manipulation, but so does Yhwach. So that's, and again, now he does have time paradox immunity. That is true, but Yhwach's not doing a time paradox. He's just seeing into the future. He's also resistant to having his existence erased as well. So again, I'm looking at, say, he does have power absorption, but so does Yhwach, so that's kind of a wash. If anything, yeah, Yhwach could also steal 682's powers as well. So, like, he does have hyperdimensionality too. Like, at his peak, he technically does rank a certain level higher than Yhwach. I'm not going to argue that, but the problem is, again, there's still no answer for the timeline manipulation, the Almighties. There's still no answer for the Almighty. That's what it just comes down to. There is no answer for that. Like, every time I hear someone say that, oh, Yhwach will lose, I'm like, you're not giving me an answer against the Almighty. You're not. I'm not saying the Almighty is the most broken anime power ever. it falls up in that category, certainly. But I mean, I'm not saying it's probably within maybe 10. It's easily in the top 20, maybe top 10 most broken anime powers. Because again, we don't know what the limitation on that power is. As far as we know, there really isn't. There's no, I mean, in the grand scheme of how far, how many, negation of abilities, being immune to them, and just affecting everything. So, yeah, I would still put Yhwach, even if at its peak he might even scale on a higher level. But it's just because the Almighty. Yeah, I mean, maybe you could make an argument that a higher dimensional being than even the Soul King, which is what he would have been. Granted, he's still not as strong as his peak dad, but whatever. But a higher dimensional being than the Soul King might not be affected by the Almighty. Maybe, but that doesn't mean the Almighty still doesn't work. They would they would have to have the same, a better version of they'd have to do what the Almighty can do and beyond that. And that's just that's the biggest hole in the argument for even a higher dimensional version of SCP beating him, is that for all of his power, he does not have the powers of the Almighty. Even if he tries to steal the powers, Yhwach could just take them right back. Like, that would just be a back and forth of stealing abilities. The only Yhwach would probably be the smart, is technically, not even technically, I'd argue he's definitely the smarter individual, less blinded by hate. And so he would have to steal the ability to steal powers from SCP-682. If he can do that, well, then you got a problem. I'd still lean towards Yhwach, but it would be a really hard fight now that I look more into like the straight levels of power of SCP-682. But mind you, that is a hypothetical one of the future outcomes version of SCP-682. Because of the numerous amounts of stories about it, there's so many different versions of where his story ends and how powerful he actually became. There are versions where he died, like straight out. Like, he's not infallible by any stretch of the means. We contain him most of the time. He does get out occasionally, and there are SCPs that can actually put him in his place. Maybe not kill him, though there are theorized some that can. So really, the majority of versions of SCP-682 straight out lose to Yhwach. It's the peak version where the debate really comes in. And I would still argue that it goes in Yhwach's favor. I would still argue that. But I digress. I am admittedly a fan of Bleach, so maybe I am a biased monster. Or, maybe that's just, maybe to be fair, it's because I have more knowledge on Bleach than I do on some other things. I don't know. But that's my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.